Great start. Hi, Iman. Let's see if there is a possibility here for everyone to put their names and what they are interested in regarding crowdfunding. If you are an entrepreneur, if you're looking at crowdfunding for raising capital, if you are an investor and you are interested in crowdfunding to get access to deals, you can just pop it in the chat so I can better orient the discussion. Iffy, I think that was you behind. I think I might give a couple moments just to have a few more people on the line here. And while I'm at it, I'm going to drop a few useful links right at the top of the chat. Right. So the link that I've just shared on the chat here is the screen that you can see right behind me. This is the African Crowdfunding Association website. And I'm going to give you, well, everyone on this call a little bit of a demo. So we'll get started with that in, say, a couple minutes here. I hope this isn't going to be a one-on-one for myself and Iman, but even if it is, that could be cool. So yeah, feel free to put any questions in the chat so on. So I'm going to wait for one more minute. Thanks for your patience, Iman. And then we'll kick it off. Okay, Iffy, are you still with us as the host? I think it's Iffy, I'm not sure.
I'm here. It's Remy. Yes, I'm here. We've got a few more people. I know there was someone that wanted to join, but the audio wasn't quite connected. But whenever you're ready, please go ahead and start. People will join us as we go along. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. So welcome, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Howard, and I'm the acting CEO of the African Crowdfunding Association. So normally in an audience of people, a lot of them have heard about crowdfunding, but don't necessarily understand how it works in the African context and have typically come across crowdfunding through foreign platforms like Kickstarter. And for those entrepreneurs in the tech scene, they might have come across sites like Seedrs and Crowdcube in the UK, where startups actually raise quite a significant amount of equity capital, sort of as an alternative financing solution for to venture capital. So I am going to give a hopefully useful presentation here that allows you to understand where to go when you are trying to raise capital on an African platform. It is a very young industry in the African continent, not for sort of lack of effort by intermediaries. It's just that in our countries or across sub-Saharan Africa, we don't actually have a single country that has put into place an enabling regulatory framework for crowdfunding. So I'll separate two types of crowdfunding: regulated crowdfunding, which is debt and equity, everything in the middle, that requires that regulatory framework in order to be legal. And then you've got all the other types of crowdfunding that a lot of people are more familiar with, like donations-based crowdfunding, rewards-based crowdfunding, pre-order sites like Kickstarter, and those don't require a regulatory framework to be legal. So if you look at the major crowdfunding markets all around the world, US, UK, France, Canada, all of those countries, they have regulators that have enabled this regulated form of crowdfunding, so your debt and equity. And in Africa, if I'm going to go down our website here, you can actually see, let me get out of your way here. You can see on this map behind me which African countries have actually started putting in place a regulatory framework. So you'll see right at the top that, well, we'll see first of all that in sub-Saharan Africa, we don't have any. In Morocco and Tunisia, you do have crowdfunding frameworks in place. And then in the countries that are sort of a darker orange here, these are the countries that are in the process of putting into place a regulatory framework. So that means that they're having private consultations and sort of selecting partners to develop that. So bit by bit, this map should all go sort of dark orange, and ACFA's work is very much on this part of crowdfunding. So we're trying to make it possible for startups and SMEs to actually raise debt capital and equity capital on crowdfunding platforms. So that's the first thing to understand. If you are a startup and you don't really know about regulations and you say to yourself, okay, well, I want to raise capital for my friends and family. That's what I would normally do, but my friends and family are not wealthy, or I've got a very small community. How do I go to sort of my fan base? How do I go to my customer base? And you might be tempted to go on, say, Facebook or LinkedIn and say, hey, everyone, I'm raising, $100,000. This is my startup. Here's my business plan. Most entrepreneurs don't know that that's actually illegal, because what you are essentially doing is promoting your fundraise to the general public, because those are public platforms, right? Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn are all very public. And it means that on the other side, the people that are reading it might not have enough experience and understanding of the risks involved in your company. They might be tempted to put in money if you say certain things about your growth projections or whatever else that are misleading or not based on fact, or otherwise sort of exaggerate the gains. So that's why regulations are in place, right? And what we are trying to do with crowdfunding is essentially create an opening in that space for a young entrepreneur who has a private company to still use those public means, because it still enables them to go to a potential base of investors that they've actually cultivated over the years, but in a regulated fashion. So the entrepreneur actually gets taken through a process that is standardized, the result of which is a sort of form of investment readiness that is standardized and has obligatory disclosures to the investors and an obligatory sort of disclosure on the risks. So that's basically what the crowdfunding regulation is. I see we've got a few more people joining here. If you have any questions, please put them directly into the chat. And if you would like to introduce yourself and tell me what part of crowdfunding you're most interested in, that would help me to give you the best information here. So we've spoken about the difference between crowdfunding that requires a regulatory framework and crowdfunding that doesn't. If you are interested in learning more about which type of crowdfunding is appropriate for your business, you can come up here. ACFA's got quite a few sort of FAQ for crowd investors, for project sponsors, so those entrepreneurs, and also about the intermediaries themselves. So these are crowdfunding platforms. If you are looking to find a crowdfunding platform in your country, it's pretty useful to click on our member directory. So ACFA is the industry association for all crowdfunding platforms in Africa. And because, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have regulatory frameworks, it was really important for all of the industry players to come together and actually set a standard of ethics in the industry and integrity, just to protect the industry from your inevitable sort of charlatans that come up calling themselves crowdfunding and actually have pyramid schemes. So we created ACFA and we created this charter of good conduct. So every organization on this list here is a crowdfunding organization. So it could be a crowdfunding platform, could also be an organization that is in the crowdfunding value chain. They've actually joined ACFA and voluntarily submitted themselves to a compliance assessment with the Charter of Good Conduct. And you can read what that Charter of Good Conduct is. This is quite a popular one here. Let me get my pointer on. That probably most of you know. This is Farm Crowdy. It's an agri crowdfunding startup. Then you've got Phoenix over here. This is a South African education crowdfunding platform. So they actually crowdfund the university fees of students in South Africa. So yeah, you can go and put in the search bar in the top of the country that you're in and see what is available in your country. If you come across a platform that is not on this list that you want to try, just send ACFA an email on our contact form and we will reach out to that platform and invite them to join. And we will also give you some of our sort of feeling of whether that is a good platform to be using or not. Okay. So I am going to give you some idea of what gets crowdfunded. I'm going to take you here to Farm Crowdy. This is one of our members and they're pretty well known. It's a Nigerian agri crowdfunding platform, and they are looking at using technology, using this platform to match investors, typically a lot of them in the diaspora, with smallholder farmers or sort of and landowners that don't have the funds and resources to actually work the land. So Farm Crowdy provides this technology, but it's also sort of a platform that provides inputs and fertilizers, seeds, etc., to the smallholder farmers in order for there to be a good harvest of the crop after a certain period of time. And once that crop is sold off into the market, there are returns generated to the original crowdfunders. So it's a very interesting form of crowdfunding. You find it all over West Africa and increasingly in South Africa. Then we've got over here your classic debt crowdfunding solution. This is a platform called Funkiss that's based in Mauritius. And they're probably one of the most advanced crowd lending platforms in Africa. So you can see the type of entrepreneur that we've got here. Let me take my pointer. So here you've got, on your way again. Let me get this. Right, you can see that these are not your sort of classic Silicon Valley candidates or venture capital candidates. These are mom and pop shops that have probably been around for quite some time and are looking for debt capital. And this is unsecured lending, so it means you don't have to have collateral to raise capital. And basically you go onto the Funkiss platform and they will give you a credit rating. So you'll see up top here, you've got rating B. Then they'll give you sort of an annual interest rate here. It's about 13%, goes to 11%, 12%, that's according to your rating. And the loan term is, you can see it from 1 year to 2.5 years. And then there's a little sort of blurb. And these are all sort of successfully or successfully crowdfunding campaigns. Normally it takes about, I think, sometimes 2 days to raise capital on this platform. It's extremely efficient. There's a lot of supply of capital on this platform because clearly people in Mauritius are quite happy to have that amount of interest rate for that amount of risk. So this works pretty well. I'm going to go take you now to equity crowdfunding platform called Uprise Africa. Now, as I mentioned, debt and equity crowdfunding does require a regulatory framework. So you'll see here on this website that I think it's the first one up here, that Uprise Africa, here it is, regulated and authorized by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority of South Africa. So this is a platform that, despite the lack of regulatory framework, actually went to the regulator and said, hey, we want to do this. Everyone in the world's doing it. Why can't we do it? And the regulator said, okay, well, your activity looks kind of like an intermediary that would need to comply with our Financial Advice Act. And so they ended up complying with that and spent a lot of money to sort of engineer a legal process that worked within the existing laws. So you'll see that here are two campaigns. This is a beer company, a brewing company, and this is a tech startup. So Uprise Africa is pretty popular with these such companies. And they are raising 3 million Rand and 6 million Rand. So quite sort of substantial amounts, but still smaller than what you would typically find a fund doing. So this is an illustration of where crowdfunding fits in, between angel investments and sort of venture capital and PE. Right. The basic process here is obviously on their website, but you actually do need to go through a due diligence process before you can launch your campaign on this website. And part of the regulatory framework that we work on at ACFA is around what that process needs to look like and who needs to do it and what the standard is. So if I sort of click back here to ACFA's website, you'll see in the top right-hand corner here a little yellow button called ACFA Label Framework. And if you want to see, if you're considering doing an equity crowdfunding campaign for your company, you might just want to go and click on that and do a little bit of reading around what a good preparation for equity crowdfunding looks like. You can do that by going over here. There's a document here called Project Sponsor Prospectus. This is like a mini prospectus that you as the entrepreneur and your crowdfunding advisor would need to put together, at least under this framework, to present to your investors when you go live. So really recommend clicking on these. Okay, any questions so far? None. And then I'll take you to another type of crowdfunding. This is donations-based crowdfunding, and it's a platform that also does rewards-based crowdfunding. So this is a type of crowdfunding that doesn't require regulation, and the advantage of that is that you can actually sort of develop your business as a crowdfunding platform. So you'll see that this is pretty busy. They've raised $3.8 million, over $3.8 million since they've been around, and they've also managed to expand into, they've done JVs in Kenya, and they are now setting up in the Gambia, thanks to some support from UNCF. So little by little, we are seeing the development of these platforms and the institutionalization, or the development of partnerships with institutionals. And this can't really take off until you get proper regulations in place. But in this case, you've got some solid action that shows that, contrary to what a lot of people say, Africans don't crowdfund each other, there's not enough disposable income, et cetera, et cetera. So this is pretty interesting. If you are an entrepreneur, especially with a consumer-facing good, and the type of business that's going to be very sort of customer-facing with a big Instagram page and Facebook, whatever, it's quite appropriate in your first step to actually do rewards-based crowdfunding as a way to test your product market fit, right? And do a bit of marketing campaign at the same time as your fundraising campaign. This is what Kickstarter is very, very successful at. So here's an example of an entrepreneur in South Africa. a company called Cape Thunder, that they are producing the world's first smooth mid-strength lychee liquor. Okay, so this is a beverage company. And this is probably a good example. She's trying to raise just 400,000 Rand, or it's like $20,000, $25,000. And so typically, again, this is an amount that you'd never raise from a fund. It's far too small. You might raise it from angel investors, but if you're not tapped into those networks, you might find yourself with more success on a platform like this. So yeah, I would encourage you to sort of spend some time understanding what works, what doesn't, just by looking at these portfolios. And yeah, I have just given you 4 examples: agri, debt, equity, and rewards-based, but there's lots of other types of crowdfunding. It is super, super interesting on the African continent. I think by virtue of the fact that technology has come to a private capital markets ecosystem that is actually very, very active. It's just not formalized. So we think of our savings and investment groups, our chamas, our tontins, our stokvels, our isusus, and we look at how they have they're still very useful for larger fundraisers, people funding their children's education abroad, and that might be some $80,000. And there's a tradition there that is, very, very useful in the absence of other good financially inclusive intermediaries. And crowdfunding simply digitizes some of that, and it brings some formality to the processes in it. So there's just less sort of asymmetry of information. There's more disclosures, there's more transparency for everyone. And when it comes to raising capital for an entrepreneur, you're talking about basically taking your first step into formal capital markets. So, instead of doing the family and friends round kind of all over the place with a cap table that's super messy, like the uncle and the cousin, not understanding valuations and it being quite a stressful process, you can invite them to join a crowdfunding round that is actually quite formalized, and sort of everyone gets the same deal, and you start with a clean cap table, an organized cap table that is not super scary for the next investor that's going to come into your round. So it's a way to sort of formalize that first step and hopefully sort of facilitate the next steps in the capital journey. And the other advantage I would say that is useful for entrepreneurs is that crowdfunding is super flexible. And even if you don't find yourself compatible with equity, there is the possibility to raise revenue-based crowdfunding where you sign agreements that actually suit your personal goals a little bit more, especially regarding ownership of your company. So I have spoken a lot. Thank you so much for listening to me. And thank you very much, Texas Position, for facilitating this. You have the website. If you have any questions, shoot me a line. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone.